having said all that, contra Dr. Douglas Petrovich, there are indeed Paleo-Hebrew engravings in Saudi Arabia. Paleo-Hebrew inscriptions at the very home of Mount Sinai. Our Saudi Discovery Group saw a good few of those inscriptions recently. Saw them in October 2021. So the good and faithful doctor would do well to dump his paradigm paralysis, since now it is indisputable. Yes, indisputable, mathematically speaking. And I have demonstrated that math as well. And I would have shown him those indisputable Hebrew inscriptions, yet he seems to have had his feet firmly planted in Egypt and was not about to budge, even if he was given a free trip to see those inscriptions for himself, as he told me. Now, I'm not just talking about proving Paleo-Hebrew inscriptions based on the numerous footprint artifacts found in and around Saudi either. Countless footprint engravings that we just so happened to stumble upon there. No, those footprints were kind of cool too, but that's just circumstantial evidence rather than positive proof. Those profuse footprints were just a small prefiguring of the giant footprint that was to be constructed some 40 years later. Constructed on the promised land side of the Jordan. No, those footprints we found in Saudi were merely pedantic proof. Pedantic proof, you might punny say. Not only that, but it is uber hard to prove that those were indeed Hebrew feet, save a sketchy DNA sample. Still, I think I have proven that Hebrew ancestry in Saudi more than sufficiently in earlier articles. I have conclusively proven that Hebrew ancestry via linguistics, that they actually left there. Have proven that with overwhelming statistics. Still, those were pretty intimate footprints that the Hebrews left there as well. Footprints that they were awfully famous for. And there is much to say for that, if you'll pardon me saying so. Footprints that mimic the outline of that pivotal camp of the Hebrews at a pivotal place called Gilgal, at a camp that the Hebrews established very soon after crossing that huge Jordan River. One of 5 major footprints to be presently found in the Promised Land. Footprints well in keeping with that land possessiveness promised Abraham as early as Genesis. A promise repeated to Moses in Deuteronomy, and finally promised to Joshua. Hence, the massive footy construction by Joshua after footing a massive river and a massive sea. With that footprint construction being about 200 meters by 85 meters in width. A couple good football fields big enough for a really big game. A Super Bowl with a super big audience. A footprint laid out with massive rocks, with more than 1 million spectators to cheer on that massive construction workers. A mighty good footprint for the reassembly of that holy tabernacle. A tabernacle finally inside of the Promised Land. Finally inside of Canaan. A mighty fine footprint where the prophet hostile Hebrews would later end up crowning their very first king. And the very same footprint where the ousted prophet Samuel would later depose their disobedient king. And now, for all you sports fans out there, here is a screenshot of that massive football pitch from an excellent source called the Holy Land Site.com. However, far more relevant to our present discussion, an engraving was recently discovered at that site. Discovered at a Scots stripling dig site. An engraving at that old tabernacle site. A miniature lead engraving, which archaeologist Scott Stripling has just started parading around early this year. Parading it around in 2022, after just having had some radio scans completed. Parading this groundbreaking engraving around despite having obtained only minimal peer support for it, lacking the unanimous support that all those dreamers insist upon seeing before jumping up and down with excitement. Unanimous support that is just a fantasy football in this soft science field. A soft science. Until they start using my methodology, of course. So, Scott the Realist is currently parading this tiny artifact on YouTube. Parading it around on the Common Man's media. A Bible-affirming Scott expects to be publishing an extended article on this amazing find sometime late in 2022. Which turned out to be 2023. An article not nearly as long as this one. In some exclusive magazine. But you'll find it in academia, just like my article. An artifact that is quite rightly turning the light-headed world of academia on its head. An artifact that has the now refuted Christopher Rolston desperately trying to salvage his antedated paradigm. Desperately trying to calm folks down. Calm them down via the broad academia portal, where I submit my articles. Plus, calm them down via the Biblical Archaeological Review portal of the Biblical Archaeology Society, as if mainstream got all that excited about that lead artifact in the first place. Excited about some puny curse tablet. It's not like this was one of the 10 Commandments or anything like that, right? And instead, urging bar readers to get all excited about a Megiddo dance floor, centuries removed from a biblical reference. Go figure, huh? Anyway, with the agnostic Rolston urging the greatest of caution and the greatest of skepticism on this more recent discovery, lest your man-made hopes be dashed to the very lead that it was written on. What a hoot. With him writing a rebuttal in academia that sounds an awful lot like screw tape in a certain C.S. Lewis book. A rebuttal that has gone over like a lead balloon. Oh, the humanity! A discovery that is highly Bible-affirming, however. An artifact that affirms an alphabet at a much earlier time than previously thought, and affirms the existence of worshippers of the divine name at a much earlier time than thought, with the upraised arms and enlarged figures. Indeed, here we have a solid lead artifact that should revise alphabet timelines by several centuries. Should revise them right back to the older timeline. Now, as you can see, the above drawing was by Gershon Galil, an expert who was previously esteemed for his fine translation of our oldest inscription to date. Oldest Hebrew inscription prior to this recently found lead one, of course. Highly esteemed for his 10th century translation, a fine, albeit loose translation. Purportedly a gender-loose translation, according to your fellow paleographer. And, of course, an uber loose translation, according to Christopher Woolston, who doesn't seem like anything that Gershon has done. Doesn't seem like any claims of certainty. Despite all that controversy, that lead artifact, with that superb translation, is highly relevant to our present article. Highly relevant in a divine name sense. Incredibly relevant in our elusive search for the sacred tetragrammaton, our search for the exact name of God with the exact pronunciation.